January 6th is still in the news. We're trying to figure out exactly what happened. As you know, if you've been around this channel for some time, we've been following it pretty closely, and we've sort of seen all the ebbs and flows about the investigation that have been taking place. And really, it's all kind of been boiling down to a finger-pointing exercise where every single federal agency is just kind of saying, nope, it was them, and nope, it was them. And the sergeant-at-arms in the Senate says, no, it was sergeant-at-arms over at the House. And he says, no, it was over there at the Senate. And they say, no, it was the Metro PD. And they say, no, it's the Capitol Hill PD. And then it was the FBI. And then the National Guard wasn't there. It's Mayor Muriel Bowser. And the list goes on, which is typical bureaucratic incompetence. So it's nothing to be surprised about. But at the same time, we've kind of not heard much from the outgoing Trump administration, right? Because what happened on January 6th is they were counting the electoral votes for the next president. So we didn't know who that was going to be at the time. Donald Trump was still in office. And I mean, we knew who it was going to be at the time, given the results of the election. But you get my point, right? There was still a possibility that Mike Pence could have read something differently. I said that was not going to happen, but it was still a possibility. And so Donald Trump was still effectively in power, right? It was his administration still up until Joe Biden transitioned in there. And then once Joe Biden was in there, now it's sort of the Democrats' ballgame, right? They seized control of the House of Representatives some time ago, and the Senate and the White House. And so they sort of control all the different levels of power in office, absent the United States Supreme Court. And so we've been all kind of, trying to piece together what's happening here. A lot of people are saying that there's missing surveillance footage and body camera footage. We're going to talk about that. There's a story here we're going to get to. And so very recently, actually today, in fact, this came out from the Epoch Times. And there's a gentleman by the name of Kash Patel, who is somebody who used to work for the Donald Trump administration. And he was sort of higher up there. He was the chief of staff under the acting United States Secretary of Defense under Donald Trump. And so he came out, he gave us a little bit of an interview that was interesting yesterday. And so I want to break down what actually happened here, because once again, this is somebody from the inside, sort of from the inside of the Trump administration, who's now coming out and giving us some confirmation that the National Guard, in fact, was offered, but then declined. We knew that they were declined, but not so much that they were offered. Okay, so this is the story over from the Epoch Times. Now, what we have here, it says the Pentagon did offer the National Guard troops 2 days before the January 6th event. Okay, so 2 days, and who is confirming this? The former chief of staff. Now, this guy, as I mentioned, he's over on Cash's Corner over at Epoch TV, and his name is Patel. Served as the chief of staff for acting U.S. Secretary of Defense under Donald Trump, and he explained why the Capitol breach could have been prevented. He also served as a government official in the United States National Security Council. Also, the United States House of Representatives said that he believes that the offer from the Trump administration was blocked for, quote, political reasons, right? And we've seen a lot of that. We saw that come out from the Sergeant-at-Arms over there. I forget whether that was from the House or the Senate, but it did come out, and we knew that, that Mayor Muriel Bowser, we're going to revisit her letter here in a minute, where she's saying, we don't want your help at all. And so we've all been speculating about that here. Why not? Okay, if we've got 18, 19 different intelligence agencies, all the alphabet soups out there that are supposed to be protecting America, January 6th is one of the most important dates in American political election cycles. It's when we count the votes. Everybody from the country is in the congressional building because they got to count the votes, right? It's all the Congress people going through this big symbolic thing that we do. And so you would imagine that it would be high alert, that the FBI, CIA, everybody else would be like, oh my goodness, we got to brace for impact, especially given a lot of the hyperventilation that we heard in the days leading up to it, where they were telling us, oh, the Oath Keepers, oh, the 3%ers, oh, the Proud Boys, blah, 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 blah. And they couldn't even protect the most sacred building in the entire country. And you're going, okay, well, why is that, right? Are they really that incompetent? Or is there somebody else out there that maybe it was, moving some levers around or maneuvering some pieces around in order to make this kind of happen, or to allow it to happen, or to sort of, facilitate or not put up fences, or just not call the National Guard, because there may be some interests that are served by having this go forward. And you can call that a conspiracy theory if you want, but you can take around and you can look around historically at some of the other things that the FBI has done. We've covered it here on the show where they framed other people, 4 guys, and sent them to prison for a long period of time back in the 60s under Hoover, I believe that was. So, there's a long history of that in this country, and it's not something that is beyond the pale, especially if you've got the entire establishment that is orienting towards one particular candidate and one particular ideology that exists in this country. Of course, I'm referencing Donald Trump. So it's easy to think if there's a mechanism and there's a motivation, there's a way to do this, that they would do it, because what it would do would make sure that they could go and just sort of needle Donald Trump, make sure that he gets impeached again, which happened, hoping that he doesn't earn the opportunity to run again, because if you're impeached, they can preclude you from seeking office. Again, that didn't happen. And so now what they're going to do is just sort of use this to hang over the heads of an entire segment of this country until they can't use it anymore. They're just going to keep beating this thing into the drum on and on and on. So Kash Patel now is out. He gives us some information about what happened from the inside perspective. Let's take a look. Who is this guy, right? This is a big statement that he's making. Who is this? He says that Wikipedia, of course, is going to call him a Trump loyalist. Now, we're going to read what the DOD has to say as well. But he's a lawyer. He's an American attorney. He's a former government official, served as the chief of staff, acting U.S. Secretary of Defense under Donald Trump, worked at the United States National Security Council, U.S. House of Representatives, and was previously a public defender with the federal government. Also a federal prosecutor working on national security cases, a legal liaison to the U.S. Armed Forces. He's also a Republican, right? Trump loyalist, according to Wikipedia, aide to Devin Nunes, played a leading role in seeking to discredit investigations into Donald Trump and the Russian interference in 2016 election. So you could say, okay, he's a Trumper, he's biased, whatever. He seems to me like somebody who's a pretty active person in American political life, somebody who holds positions that typically have, high regard, a lot of esteem there. Representative, National Security Council, Armed Forces, legal liaison, and the list goes on and on. And so this is not somebody that many people would just go, oh, this guy's out of his mind, right? This is a conspiracy theorist. This is somebody who is just, rambling off the cuff about any of this stuff. No, in fact, this is somebody that has a lot of credentials. He's been in the government for quite some time. Here is what the DOD has to say about him. Former chief of staff, again, Christopher Miller was the acting Secretary of Defense during the time, responsible for leading the mission at the department. He was also the deputy assistant to the president and senior director for counterterrorism at the National Security Council, right? He oversaw several of Donald Trump's top priorities, including things like eliminating ISIS and Al-Qaeda leadership, safe repatriation of numerous American hostages, 17 intelligence briefing communities that were provided in the president's daily briefing. And so he's like credentialed. He's somebody that I think people should listen to and take seriously, just given on some of that background there. All right. So here he is. He's over on Kash's Corner, and he's having this conversation. And let's listen in and see what he has to say about this.
Why on January 6th, when it has now publicly been admitted by the FBI that they had information that there could possibly be a situation like that at the United States Capitol, why weren't the cabinet secretaries under President Trump briefed? Why didn't the FBI put 1,000 uniformed agents around the U.S. Capitol? Where was the fence? Right? These are the lackings that led to January 6th. These are the mistakes, intentional or otherwise, that led to January 6th. And if you look at the video from January 6th, and they still won't release all of it, an entire side of the Capitol, I believe it's the south side, was totally unmanned. No police officers whatsoever. And that's where the crowd first came in through. And you have to ask yourself, what happened on January 6th? Now, look, I was chief of staff of the Department of Defense on the 6th. We had offered the Capitol Police and Mayor Bowser of Washington, D.C., thousands of National Guardsmen and women 2 days before January 6th, and they turned us down. So it could have been prevented.
So could it have been just not a lot of information sharing happening?
I think it was not enough information sharing happening, and I think what people now are starting to realize is that the protecting of the U.S. Capitol on a day like January 6th is a law enforcement function. You cannot have the United States military descend and occupy the area around the United States Capitol. It's literally illegal. But they can assist their law enforcement partners through a request from the mayor or the governor or the Capitol Police. And that's what should have happened, and that's what we told them they might want to consider, but they flat out rejected it for political reasons, I believe.
Wow. So pretty big claims there, right? And again, somebody credentialed, somebody saying, look, here's my perspective on this. The Capitol building was halfway unprotected. Literally the entire backside of it wide open. Police weren't even there. So anybody could have come around and just gone right in there. And we've seen sort of videos of that, sort of clips. We played one here where that one officer came out and said, I disagree with you, but I respect you, or something like that, right? And the guy just kind of walks in like they're opening doors and stuff. And so here this guy comes out, highly credentialed, somebody on the inside, somebody from the Trump administration, now also confirming that, yeah, we offered them National Guard support 2 days prior to this happening in the first place, and they rejected it. They flat out rejected it. But in addition to that, there's all sorts of other information that just seems to be missing, including some of these other surveillance videos that the prosecutors, U.S. attorneys, Department of Justice, FBI, whomever, just have not released yet. And he's confirming, yeah, it's out there. Why is that, right? Who was responsible for this? There's 18, 19, 17 different intelligence agencies with billions, trillions of dollars that are responsible for ensuring the continuity of government, and they couldn't preclude 1,000 people from coming in and sort of sieging the entire building. Absolutely embarrassing, unless it was something that, wasn't that big of a deal, because it might have served somebody's interest. Now, his data that they actually did offer that, right? People might be saying, well, that's uncorroborated. And I don't think so at this moment, because we've talked about this previously. Here's the letter from Mayor Muriel Bowser. We've played this before on the show previously when this happened. Here she signed this document, and she copied Congresswoman Elena Holmes Norton. And you'll notice this was written on January 5th. Okay, January 5th goes over to the Honorable Secretary of the Army, the Honorable U.S. Acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen, remember him, and the Honorable Chris Miller, Acting Secretary of Defense at the time. And guess who was the assistant, the chief of staff to the Acting Secretary of Defense? This guy was, right? That guy, Kash Patel, was the chief of staff for this guy right here. So he says, probably right on January 4th, that we made the offer over to the Washington, D.C. people, right? And they are responding now, because if he says on January 4th, we sent it, they fire a letter back from Mayor Muriel Bowser. The letter goes back and says, hey, dear Attorney General Rosen and Acting Secretary Miller, which is Kash Patel's boss, says, listen, as the law enforcement agency charged with protecting all of this stuff, we got it covered. The District of Columbia government has not requested personnel from any other federal law enforcement agencies. Yeah, we know that. And Kash Patel is saying, we know you didn't request it. That's why we offered it, because it could be a problem, right? This is a very important day. We know you idiots didn't request it because for some stupid reason you can't secure the Congress building, which is why we offered it to you on January 4th. And so Muriel Bowser then gets the letter and says, oh, no, we've got it all under control. We don't want your racist Trumpers here commandeering our city, and so we're going to reject your offer respectfully. So she fires this letter back on January 5th, and you see where that's going, right? She says, we are mindful that in 2020, MPD, the Metro PD there in D.C., was expected to perform demanding tasks, and we had unidentifiable personnel, and this caused confusion, and there's no way for the MPD and the federal law enforcement to decipher armed groups. And so she's sort of detailing all of the policies and all of the reasons why they don't need help before she finishes off with this paragraph. She says, listen, to be clear, D.C. is not requesting other federal law enforcement personnel and discourages any additional deployment without immediate notification to and consultation with the MPD. If such plans are underway, the protections of everybody is our utmost concern. We're well trained here at the MPD. We don't need any of your other stuff. We can handle all First Amendment rights within the District of Columbia. Thanks, but no thanks is what she said. Declined. Your offer has been declined. And so, kind of a bad decision, wasn't it? And so my question for some time had always been, well, what was she responding to? What was this? And so now Kash Patel comes out, just confirms for us, yeah, we actually made an offer and they declined that. And in addition to that, half the Capitol building was just left open. Not only did we say you could use some additional troops, not only did they just say, no, we don't need them, we've got it covered, but then they left the door open to the barn. And everything, got commandeered. So you go, how is that? Is that just that level of incompetence, or is there some sort of an incentive for some people to allow something bad to happen? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just a conspiracy theorist here. Who knows? Now, as a result of this, right, when a crisis happens, when something happens badly, then everybody wants to spring into action and sort of seize the natural consequences that flow as a result of it. They want to get in on the grift, as it were. So now, as we've mentioned, right, the Capitol Hill Police, they're going to be opening offices over in Florida and California, and they're going to be extending their jurisdiction to be investigating any threat to any single congressperson that exists anywhere in the country. And if they just happen to also be in your city and your local law enforcement just happens to need some help, guess who happens to be there? Well, the Capitol Hill Police do. And even if their jurisdiction, it doesn't necessarily warrant them being in your city in the first place because there's maybe nothing really going on there, they'll still be there because that's the federal government. They've got another $350 billion there that Joe Biden just sort of unleashed on America as a result of the COVID bill that went through. And now they're sort of just law enforcementing up the entire country. Everybody's just getting armed up. And we've got Capitol Hill officers coming around. We've got all sorts of surveillance categorizations. We've got domestic terrorism is now a new buzzword that's going to be a part of Nancy Pelosi's select committee on the Capitol. And so the list goes on and on. But now, my friends, we have a dedicated database. So if you didn't already sort of have enough investigation going on here, now we've got $6.1 million that are going to be used to create a private database for Capitol riot prosecution. So the Justice Department, as of today, just agreed to pay $6.1 million to a technology contractor to create a massive database of videos, photographs, documents, and social media posts related to the Capitol riot as part of the process of turning relevant evidence over to defense attorneys for more than 500 people. Okay. And we've already pilloried this week. 500 people is like a joke, my friends, because I showed you earlier this week that the city of Scottsdale, which is just a little court right down here, which one city in the state of Arizona, has about 4 to 6 judges and about 8 to 12 prosecutors over there. And they processed 600 and something cases in June over this. And they've got a discovery system. Okay, we represent a lot of people out of there. We get body cameras. We get all sorts of data from them on a regular basis. It's very easy. They don't need to go and create all of these new systems and 6 million here and over here. And, we need continuances because they're drama queens like the U.S. Attorney's offices. Over in Scottsdale, they're sort of, regular criminal lawyers like most of us are. And they are able to just actually handle cases. Every time we have a golf tournament that comes down, right, and a lot of people get in trouble, or we have a Super Bowl and sort of the whole country comes crashing into Scottsdale, guess what happens? Their caseload doubles and they don't go crying to the Justice Department for another $6 million. They don't need to go create these massive databases with photographs and documents and all of these different things in order to prove a trespass case or in order to prove a disorderly conduct or a criminal damage case. Okay. It is a joke what these people are doing. It's embarrassing, but you can see what's happening and nobody knows any better because everybody's just, a regular sort of civilian. They go, wow, 500 people facing, that's a lot of people, right? No, because Scottsdale just did 620 of them in June. They're going to do another 620 probably in July and again and again and again. The U.S. attorneys, they only had one insurrection. And so many different cities around this country are bigger and processing more cases than the city of Scottsdale is. And they're not buckling at the seams because of their bureaucratic incompetence. So what we're seeing here is just sort of, they're making this into something way bigger than it is. 500 defendants is laughable, honestly. Okay, so to take on, as you can see, the daunting task, right? Very, very daunting to deal with 500 cases. The federal government has turned to Deloitte, a financial advisory services, a firm prosecutors called a litigation support vendor with extensive experience providing complex litigation technology services. And again, folks, these are not crimes of the century, okay? To prove a trespass case, you basically got to prove that somebody shouldn't have been in a physical location where they are. You go, you get a couple photographs. Hey, John, is that you? Yeah. Are you in the Capitol building? Yeah, it is. Okay. Well, here's the deal. You can take this plea deal. We're going to give you diversion. We're going to dismiss the charges as long as you don't do this again, put you on probation, pay a fine, go clean up some trash, go do some community service. Otherwise, you can take your case to trial. We don't need 48,000 pictures of you because we got these 2 or 3 that are all pretty substantive and we think we can make our case right here. And so you've got an option. Defendant number 1, yes or no, do you want to take this plea deal or not? Right? If you're a prosecutor and you just go through 500 of them, yes or no, yes or no, yes or no. And then there's some of them that are a little bit more serious, right? Where there are aggravated assault charges or there's some sort of a weapons charge and you segment those out. How many of the 500 are there? 100 of them? Are all 500 of these really obscene aggravated assault charges? I'm guessing not, because I've covered several of them here where it's nothing like that at all. It's people who showed up the next day or got arrested the next morning for getting in fights with people outside their hotel rooms. We've covered the cases here on the channel. So what they're talking about here is it's just such a joke. I can't even explain it. All right. Prosecutors are trying to organize thousands of hours of body-worn camera. Oh, like the Scottsdale Police Department does every single night in Old Town Scottsdale. Closed-circuit surveillance camera footage. Yeah, because there's like 50 bars out there with all sorts of camera footage. More than 1 million social media videos, right? Okay. So, and phony and email accounts and responses and 6,000 grand jury subpoenas, according to a court filing on Tuesday. So, extremely dramatic. They're going to need to go get every single photograph and every single evidence in order to prosecute a defendant. Why? Because that requires more work. It requires more money. It requires more laws, more jurisdiction. It requires the Capitol Hill Police being thrown in your city. They don't need it to actually prosecute any of these defendants, but they're going to get it because they can get away with it, because people like Politico and these articles say, wow, this is such a daunting task. We're so overwhelmed. And Merrick Garland and the Attorney General, Lisa Monaco, the Assistant Deputy Attorney General, they are out there day after day. We just had the 6-month anniversary, like a bad girlfriend, screaming about this. We have to celebrate 6 months since January 6th. And Merrick Garland was out with the Capitol Hill PD, and they were all just sort of patting themselves on the back. Good job, everybody. Well done. Is that it? Is it just going to be a cool 6.1 million? Let's see. A government contracting database shows that Deloitte was awarded 6.1 million in order to provide automated litigation support services beginning on June 1 of this year. Going over to the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington, the order was placed under a broader contract issued last year to 5 companies for such services to the Justice Department. So the award to Deloitte could grow to nearly 26 million, according to contracting data reviewed by Politico. So it's just a down payment. The still incomplete database has sharply slowed down efforts by prosecutors and defense attorneys to hammer out plea deals for dozens, if not hundreds, of alleged rioters. Yeah, so very dramatic, right? Yes, in Scottsdale, right, every weekend there's dozens and dozens of people who are arrested every night. And so it's sharply slowed that down. And I don't really care about that, right? You have a right to a speedy trial in this country, and judges and the prosecutors, the U.S. attorney's offices are saying we are so overwhelmed because we have 500 defendants that we need continuances. And people like Jacob Chansley are just sitting in custody, rotting away for 6 months without anybody giving a damn about it because of this whole thing being politicized, because Deloitte needs 26 million, because the Biden administration and Merrick Garland and all of the Democrats need to keep needling this into the end of the earth. Meanwhile, people are just sitting in custody, rotting away. And the American taxpayers, of course, have to pay for all this. Another 26 million going to Deloitte. So it's incomplete. Prosecutors have repeatedly emphasized the massive trove as evidence as it grows daily as they recover phones, hard drive, and other devices from newly arrested defendants. What do they need to prove? What do they need to prove? Are they going to be charging these like massive webs of conspiracies? If so, then okay, then you do need to do all of that. Or are these trespass disorderly conduct cases? You don't need all of that stuff in order to incriminate somebody for that. So, all right, let's see. Several defendants have sought quick resolution only to be told that they must wait until the database is established. So, in my opinion, they are violating these defendants' due process rights. The judges should be saying, hey, prosecutors, listen, you have an obligation to disclose the evidence that you have. If you don't have the evidence right now, then you're going to be sanctioned for not disclosing it. Or we're going to allow these defendants to exercise their right to a speedy trial, have their day in court, because we don't want them having these charges hanging over their heads indefinitely while you people can't figure out your act. Get it together over there. And so put up or shut up, right? Put the evidence up and let the defendants go. And if the government can't meet their burden, then that's it. They can't be charged again. But for some reason, that's not happening in these cases. And a lot of the judges are just saying, oh, sure, yeah, you need more time, Mr. Prosecutor, U.S. attorney's offices. These D.C. judges just say, yeah, no problem at all, because this was, in fact, the most heinous thing that's ever happened in American history. And we agree with you, U.S. attorney, that we need more time and you need to do your work and your due diligence. His right to a speedy trial be damned. Any due process rights all just go right out the window because of these two sides of the same coin, the prosecutors and the judges, all just being in favor of the demonization of one political ideology. It's reprehensible. It makes my blood boil. All right, let's carry on with this article. Now, the broader department-wide contract that's going over to Deloitte, it's known as Mega 5. It's scheduled to run for up to 6.5 years and involve up to $1.5 billion, my friend, in spending. So if you think that that $6 million database is going to stop right there, no, it's currently being earmarked, but it's part of a much, much bigger bucket of 1.5 billion that now they're going to be using to create this massive database. And so I'm going to guess, if you've ever texted somebody or visited somebody's Facebook profile or hopped into their group for whatever organization that they're a part of, and you're just incidentally, even remotely connected to it, you're probably going to end up in that database. So I'll see you there. I'll see you right inside there. And we'll have a little bit of a powwow, I guess. The Justice Department spokesperson did not respond to requests for comment on the contract. A message seeking comment from Deloitte was also not returned. The database is being built for the U.S. Attorney's Office, just one of several being established in connection with the sprawling Capitol riot investigation. Okay, one of several, my friends. They're going to be building these all over the place. The Federal Public Defender's Office is also considering hiring a contractor to help defense lawyers digest the massive trove of data. The FBI appears to be using various computer systems, including facial recognition technology, to scan massive amounts of video, isolate images of individual suspects. Those pictures and videos are then released by the FBI on social media as they continue to look for grandma every day on their Twitter profile. Under Supreme Court precedent, prosecutors are obligated to turn over to the defense all relevant evidence that could be beneficial to defendants. Yeah, it's called exculpatory evidence, and prosecutors have said that they interpret those obligations to mean that they must have access to all or nearly all the evidence, which the Justice Department has said is the largest criminal probe in U.S. history, which is just outstanding. So, this is the worst thing that's ever happened, of course. So they're going to continue to investigate this until the end of Earth. And it's my friends, I know it's bad, but I mean, it's really bad. What happened on January 6th, if you didn't know, it was way worse than 9/11. And so I didn't know that until I listened to Lincoln Project co-founder of this guy, Steve Schmidt. So he's sort of in alignment with a lot of the prosecutors over there, thinking that this is really, really heinous, and we really need to do something about it. So the Daily Caller got a clip from him saying that Steve Schmidt says January 6th was, quote, profoundly more dangerous than the 9/11 attacks, and, quote, in the end, likely to kill a lot more Americans, including the casualties of the wars that lasted 20 years following it. So let's listen in to Mr. Steve Schmidt here describing how bad this whole thing was.
My friend Matthew Dowd, our friend, talked about this. He couldn't be more right. The 1/6 attack for the future of the country is a profoundly more dangerous event than the 9/11 attacks. And in the end, the 1/6 attacks are likely to kill a lot more Americans than were killed on the 9/11 attacks, which will include the casualties of the wars that lasted 20 years following it. My friend Matthew Dowd.
What the heck is that guy talking about? There were 6 people, I think, killed, and 2 of them were by suicide. 2 of them were Trump supporters. 1 of them was Brian Sicknick, natural causes. And then something like that was worse than 9/11? And the wars and everything else that followed after 9/11? Iraq, Afghanistan, and all of the other conflicts that America's been a part of? So that's Steve Schmidt. That was the Lincoln Project, my friends. That was the organization that many people were all lathering all over Twitter back during the election. Those are really astute observers over there. So, okay, so what's going on now with the Select Committee? So McCarthy is now responding to the Select Committee. Quick reminder what happened here. So Nancy Pelosi has been wanting to form this committee to investigate January 6th. And they tried to get the Republicans to get on board. Mitch McConnell didn't want to do it, so that never ended up happening. They need some Republican support in order to pass a commission. That didn't happen, so then Nancy Pelosi went back and said, fine, if you Republicans don't want to play ball on this thing, I'm just going to independently create my own select committee. And a select committee is much like a committee like the Armed Services Committee or the House Budgetary Committee. Those are permanent committees that weigh in on budget issues or military issues. In this case, this is going to be a temporary committee only set up to just investigate January 6th. And so then it's going to evaporate later down the line. So Nancy Pelosi then implemented this thing, got Liz Cheney on board. And many people were wondering, well, what's the basis? What's the scope of this? Who's going to be investigating what? And now Kevin McCarthy, who is the House Minority Leader from the Republicans, is responding. And so we're starting to get a little bit of a framework for how this whole thing is going to work, which is certainly going to be coming up soon. So let's see what's going on here. So McCarthy is expected now to appoint Republicans onto the committee. And the reason why this is news is, of course, because it wasn't clear whether he would name anybody at all. And so that was from the original story here. After playing coy on the subject, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy is, in fact, planning to appoint Republicans on to the committee. House Speaker Pelosi last week announced that they would be creating the select committee. McCarthy is going to get 5 appointments. He hadn't initially decided whether he would appoint anyone at all, and reportedly privately threatened Republicans who would accept an appointment by Pelosi. And so Liz Cheney did that, but we know that Liz Cheney and Kevin McCarthy for a long time, have kind of been at odds anyways. So let's see what else is here. A senior GOP aide familiar with the process said that there are ongoing efforts to decide which members to appoint, with some likely being allies of Trump in an attempt to downplay the rioting. Some Republicans expect McCarthy to use the appointments to undermine what they see will be Pelosi's main aim, which is to politically damage Trump, right? So it's going to be like a version of the impeachment party again. We were celebrating that here for some time. And maybe we're going to have a committee party next time. So, however, McCarthy is also getting pressure from some in the party to appoint more moderate Republicans, the timing of which is unclear. We have a representative from Florida, a Democrat. Her name is Stephanie Murphy. She says that the Republicans have an obligation to get all the facts. Okay, so what's going to happen? We're going to start with having law enforcement officers testify to share their experiences that day. Oh, no. And she said when asked whether Trump would be called to testify. So do you know what this is going to be? It's going to be a select committee where they just bring every officer one after another right in front of the American people, the American cameras, and it's one big sob story after the other. I was so scared of Nancy Pelosi, and is going to bring up AOC, and remember her. I think she still has PTSD. She's probably still getting some psychiatric care, which is a good thing, actually. I support that. So hopefully that goes somewhere. And the FBI, meanwhile, they are hard at work digging into this thing. So we all want answers. We've known that for some time. One of the biggest answers that we want to know is why one of these when they go in and they capture these Capitol Hill rioters, these really terrorists, sometimes they find some really, really serious things in their apartments and houses and basements and bunkers and nuclear silos and things. Well, they found something, my friends, that is really scary. Let's take a look at this. Oh my goodness. That is a Lego architecture of the United States Capitol building, and Lego actually sells those. And a Capitol Hill rioter had one of those, and it was built in his house. And you know what? I don't know this for sure or not, but I even think that he was over the age of 12. Which is a good thing. So it's safety. So he was able to put that together. Yeah, the FBI has been ridiculed, as they should, for seizing a man's Lego set of the U.S. Capitol, right? They're building a case piece by piece, said Steve Watson over at Summit News, which is just so good. The FBI is building their cases piece by piece. All right, the FBI seized a man's Lego set at the U.S. Capitol building after declaring him to be a leading rioter during the January 6th incident. Court records note that the federal prosecutors have accused 27-year-old Robert Morse of directing other rioters in one of the most intense and prolonged clashes with Capitol Police around the building that day. Former Army Ranger Morse, like many others arrested, has been languishing in prison. He faces 9 counts of inciting violence. He's still in custody, which is just insane. The documents note that, quote, during his arrest, law enforcement recovered some clothing, might be dangerous clothing, as well as other items that appear to match those he carried with him on the 6th, including a "Don't Tread on Me" flag, which is a terrorist flag, a neck gaiter, terrorist neck gaiter, a military utility bag, clearly for a terrorist, and a black tourniquet and military fatigues. And you'll also note in quotes, law enforcement also recovered a fully constructed U.S. Capitol Lego set. Oh, Steve Watson says the horror. And he notes that the Hill notes, quote, it's unclear why Morse had the Lego set. This one right here. Oh my goodness. And so if you go over to Summit News, summit.news, you'll be able to chime in on that thread. There's some pretty good stuff over there. Somebody posted this in response. This is the Lego set called the Capitol Hill Invasion. which you can see Jacob Chansley here is being built with Legos, and we've got the entire crew that just broke their way into the Capitol building. Now, this one, I don't know about this age restriction. I'm not sure that 6+. I think that probably should go up to 12+ like the other one was down here. But you can see the whole crew over there. You can see even the police officers are not having a good time. This guy's having a good time. He's filming himself, and we got another Trump supporter with a gun, which is not accurate. I mean, there were no guns. The only shooting took place. There was a police officer. These guns are not accurate. There were no guns there. But all right, so that is that's just outstanding. Good job, FBI, and good luck with your investigation. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the questions that are coming in. We're going to take a look and see if this form's working. See, oh my goodness, we got 23 questions coming in hot. Woo, this is going to be a lot. All right, so let's see what we have in here. All right, so look at this. This is pretty interesting, isn't it? We've got some data coming in on the questions. We've got Kash Patel. 87% of the questions are about that. Let's see if we can run through some of these individual questions and see. This one is coming from Soul Viking. So look at this. So maybe we'll be able to format it like this and see if this can work a little bit. All right. So he says, hey, Rob, do you think that we will learn anything new about the unindicted co-conspirators that allegedly exist? Have you seen anything new related to these people? And I have not there, Soul Viking. So right now, I think it's just sort of speculative, right? People are wondering, where is the dog that isn't barking, right? It's sort of, you are used to hearing a dog barking. You're used to seeing a certain person in a certain position, especially in criminal cases. And so when you start to see a pattern of people that are being indicted and certain information is sort of hitting law enforcement from certain areas and people go, well, where'd that come from? Everybody's going, there's something that's kind of missing. It's the dog that isn't barking. And maybe that is an undercover informant, right? Maybe that's an undercover agent. And so I don't know specifically sort of what the stage is here. I think you're probably going to see a ton of FOIA requests and a lot of things kind of, floating around out there, but I don't expect anything useful to come from the congressional investigation. That is for sure. All right, another question coming in from John Halgren says, where does one find an attorney to help fight a vaccine mandate at work or school? Gosh, that's a good question. What kind of attorney would that be? I would say that would be probably an employment lawyer, really, in your local, in your state. Probably, and I don't even do anything remotely close to that, but I would say an employment lawyer would probably be where you want to start. We have Wolfgang Deo's in the house. Got a long question here. Let's see if we can parse through this one. Says, given that the Democrats want to pretend to be patriotic, how do we get a constitutional legislation to go after flag burners? Per the American Legion, as a veteran, I support this type of respectful flag burning listed here, and since free speech involves symbolic gestures, there is likely a time and place where one ought to burn the flag. I think personal injury, so I'm going to kind of skim through this. Riotous, they left. I think personal injury is currently best standing law against flag burning. Flag burning will take proper action and sanctions in the latter two cases. Government recognizes disrespectful adversary delineation of the flag burning. It's a good question. Given that the Democrats want to pretend to be patriotic, how do we get constitutional legislation to go after flag burners? So I think is the point of the question there, Wolfgang, so that the Democrats would no longer be able to pretend to be democratic, right? So that if you prohibited, if you moved flag burning legislation forward, which, I'm not sure that I necessarily even support that, right? I'm a free speech person, through and through. But I think your perspective here would be that if you outlawed that, then that would make it so the Democrats, if you introduce legislation to promote that ban, then the Democrats would necessarily have to respond to that. And so I think that might pop the patriotic sort of bubble that you're implying. Not super sure yet, though. Sharon Quidney's here says there is a lot of evidence that those who were able to stop any trouble on January 6th were told to stand down. It was a political maneuver to blame Trump, to frame him and keep him from running again. It was an inside job, and all this talk about that riot being an attempt to take over the government is a Reichstag fire 2.0. Yeah. Look, we all saw, I think, some inappropriate things happen that day. but I have a lot of open questions about it, and I don't think we've gotten to the bottom of it at all. We got Paula MK here says, why is the Capitol Police exempt from having to disclose the name of the officer involved death? Still no definitive information on the Ashley Babbitt killing. Everywhere else has to disclose that information within a week or so. How can that be changed? And why do I feel like we're in real life Hunger Games? If you haven't read the book series, you should. I have not read them, and I haven't even seen the movies. I think I watched part of one of them, and I didn't really get it, but I probably didn't invest what needed to be invested in that. So the Ashley Babbitt stuff, well, I think the lawful explanation, of course, is because they were the Capitol Hill Police. And so the Capitol Hill Police have all of these special exemptions carved out because they're the Capitol Hill Police. Just like our Congress people carve out all sorts of other exemptions, like related to stock transactions and health care and all sorts of stuff. They also exclude themselves from really any oversight. That's why the Capitol Hill Police can continue to maintain a total lack of transparency without any real consequence. Edon Tessis here says, what is the chance that we actually get the name of the person who made the call to open the gates and let the people walk in? Well, you'd have to presume that that was something that happened, like there is one person that actually made that call. I'm not sure that's the case, but if you're looking for a single person, like if it's the, Department of Defense director or somebody, I would say probably zero. Wolfgang is talking about the Nuremberg Code. Good to see you, Wolfgang. Let's see what else we've got. Want to know says, why wasn't he called during Trump's impeachment trial? Pelosi and the mayor in charge get rid of both of them for incompetence. Why wasn't he called? During Trump's impeachment trial, well, I think that was negotiated. I think that if they would have called Trump, they were going to open the floodgate with, I think, like 400 other witnesses or something like that. Remember that at the end there during the impeachment proceedings, they were throwing a lot of questions in there, or a lot of possibilities in there. Jeremy Matredas here says, Rob, when looking at the events of 1/6 from a big picture and political filter, it is very clear that the opposition had plans in place to exploit the situation to make the Trump campaign and Trump supporters look as bad as possible. Unfortunately, there wasn't anyone that could have foreseen how the peaceful gathering was going to be exploited. Going forward, I hope that future campaigns learn from this event and plan for every potential risk and be ready to call an audible when things don't go as planned, which is something that I totally agree with you there on that, right? I mean, if you want to be critical of Trump for anything, it's sort of that he didn't see this coming, right? That he did not see that if you if you create an environment like this, he can call it the deep state, call it whatever you want, that they would exploit this to your advantage, right? And we sort of have seen that, I think, previously. Trump knows this is kind of the routine, that any time that they can look at Kyle Rittenhouse or something like that, right? We have a case, in my opinion, that is clearly self-defense, which turns into this whole white supremacy thing. It's like every time there's anything that is bad, the media is going to take it and use it to their advantage. And so if you create a situation where you can actually make the claim that Donald Trump not only caused a riot, but was the person literally responsible for it. I mean, he actually, like when I say cause, actually caused it, right? So it is, I think, kind of feels like a rookie mistake, if I can be candid about it. Let's see. We've got Thunder 7 says, it's good to hear from Kash. Truth and facts. I guess the Dems are going to remove his law license now. Can they do that now, Rob, that he's exposing the Capitol riot planned by Pelosi, Bowser, and the FBI informers to find a reason to impeach President Trump? So, I don't know where he's licensed. I don't think that those claims would open him up to any problems with the state bar. Now, of course, Giuliani is going through something with them at the moment. And I think the basis for that is a little bit different. The Giuliani thing was more about, I think, him not being able to substantiate certain claims. We have Osak in the house. Aaron's here. He says, Rob, with the lack of protection at the Capitol, do you think this could affect the outcome of those already in trouble? With the lack of protection at the Capitol, do you think this could affect the outcome of those already in trouble? So, I see what you're saying. Yes. So, I see what you're saying. You're saying if it is true that it was sort of open, I still think that they're technically in violation of the law. You're gonna have a hard time, I think, proving the I'm just a tourist defense in any type of in any one of these cases. All right, and so we're going to Angel says, I have no doubt that the decision not to bring in the National Guard on 1/6 was 100% political. So why are the Dems fighting so hard to have this special commission? Why are the Republicans so against it? Let's air this out once and for all and move on. Yeah, right. But still, I feel like we are living in a bizarro world as the answer seems so obvious. Yeah? right? And I agree with you there, Angel. I think that it's a good point that the question really becomes: is the commission going to get to the bottom of anything? You know, is this actually going to resolve anything for us? Or is it all just going to be a political show where they just bring in one person after the other to just come on in and just tell us, officer, about how scary it was. Okay, got you. Next one, and the next one, and the next one, just to make it all, very, very showy for the American people. All right, so great questions. I think that actually worked out fairly well. We're going to move on. Apologies if I didn't get to your questions, but we got to get on to the next segment. Before we do, quick reminder that I am a criminal defense attorney over here at the R&R Law Group. We do criminal defense law in the state of Arizona. Anybody facing criminal charges, we would love the opportunity to help. 480-787-0394 is our number, and rrlawaz.com, where our mission here is to provide safety, clarity, and hope for good people facing criminal charges. We can help with things like DUIs, drug offenses, misdemeanor violations. The list goes on. We're very passionate about what we do. We love to help our clients get great results and get things back on track, put all of this behind them. We'd love the opportunity to speak with you, available for a free case evaluation. And if you don't need legal services, that's good news. We also offer some law enforcement interaction training in the event that you are going to be around police or out and about at a sporting game or at a bar, at a restaurant. Might be good to know how to deal with the police. This is available now at gumroad.com/Robert Grueller. It helps support the show anytime you go on over here. You can also follow me if you're not interested in any of these courses. Would certainly appreciate a follow because I have some other things in the works that I want to unveil shortly. And so once again, thank you to all of you who are supporting us over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Okay,